Hi, hello. My name is Tiffany Jocko, the CEO and founder of Food Robbers. Food Robbers is a local food deals on the go platform that really focuses on our local communities, the people who grow our food, the people who make our wonderful wine and bakeries and restaurants. And this is a way to help see them flourish in the ways that they deserve to be. On my last episode, you heard me talk a little bit about my experience for the last 10 years in the food and beverage industry. Maybe not in a very linear sense, but it was as honest as it could be. And now today I have the pleasure of being here with John Sutcliffe. And I thought that I would be the one that gave the brief introduction because I think that I know it as well as my own. John Sutcliffe was born and raised in Wales, where he went to the Royal Academy. And after a career in rugby...
Can I correct you on one thing?
Oh, I was wrong.
Yeah, it's not the Royal Academy, it's the Royal Military Academy. The Royal Academy is art.
And I was then I was wrong.
Right.
Then I was wrong.
So,
and I knew I might fumble a little bit.
Right.
Where he came over to the States and began going to school on the West Coast, right?
Yes, Reed College.
Yep. And eventually made his way over to the East Coast and helped open up restaurants in New York City like Maya's Place and Tavern on the Green.
Yeah.
And then proceeded to open up around 20 different restaurants in the Charleston area.
Sounds way more impressive than it was, just so you know.
Where eventually he came to Southwest Colorado to live his life as a cowboy. And
here I am.
Here you are with a fantastic vineyard with genuine old world style wines. And you do a damn good job. You do a damn good job. And
Thank you. I've got a great team.
You do. And this is one of the first places here in Colorado that made me feel like home. And in my last podcast, I mentioned on the fact that I never had the choice to come work down here. It was never an option for me. It felt like, and that you brought your manager in to meet me before I even had said yes.
Well, we needed,
and it was one of the best things that's happened to me, and so I'm very thankful for that. And a small disclaimer: I am not responsible for anything that John says.
Yeah, no, nobody is.
Yeah, and that's one of the best reasons that I have had him on here, because he's fun. I don't think I've heard the same story twice.
Good.
Yeah. So, and that's not usual for people. People really like sticking with their good ones. And I think that you have more good ones. Well, good is a relative term, so to say.
Yeah. Well, it's, we're not going to talk about the one time I hit a home run in my last year at high school.
No.
Do you know what I mean? Repeated for 5,000 people. No.
Yes.
It's
okay.
not us.
So now I'll let you take over a little bit, and I just want you to tell us what you do and why you do it, and a little bit about where it began for you.
Yeah, it's funny. We now make wine, and obviously I bought the place. We've got permits both in the mountains and in the desert, so we were going to run cattle seasonally and with this permits. And my architect, who's a marvelous guy called Reggie Gibson, who'd done a restaurant with me in Charleston immediately prior to coming here, thought that vines would look jolly nice around the house. I mean, I've come up with all sorts of completely dishonest stories about why it was done, but this is what happened. And so we planted them, and after a bit, we planted a couple of acres, and after a bit, we pressed the wine. It just became fun. And then it clearly was meant to take off. Mm-hmm. And because of my friends and relationships with the restaurant business, I was taken seriously before I should have been. And that was good. So first, my wines were accepted more out of sympathy than quality. And then subsequently, we made very good wines.
And where exactly is the vineyard located? What would you describe the area that it's in?
Well, it's one of the most precious places in southwest Colorado. It was where some of the first settlers got here in the 1880s. The same family's still living here. It's absolutely beautiful. And I think its purity is that it's still a functional. People are making their living down here. It's not a toy canyon. It's not somewhere outside LA where rock stars live.
It's a way of life.
It's a way of life, and people, there's a whole different fabric and a feeling when people are making their living from the land.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lovely feeling.
So how would you describe your wine process? What made you want to make wines in the way that you do? And where has the vineyard come in all of its years since it began?
Okay, we'll tackle those in
In
order.
increments.
The first thing is I obviously had marvelous wines at the restaurants I had, and Tavern on the Green was, seats 900 people, and opening that, and then the River Cafe, which I worked on. It never operated. So I had a bit of a feeling about wines, and I drank lots of wines at home in England and Wales. And then it struck me that that was my world. So if I was going to make wine, it was illogical for me to try to service a local market over which I had no understanding. So immediately I tried to make big, delicious, nationally recognized wines. Did I pass all the time? No. By the same token, that was my target. I could talk to those people, and they got me, and I got them in a way that I'd have had a tougher time in a wine store in a small western village. I couldn't have done that, and I would have seemed awful. They would have hated me. So that's how that started. And then I brought in first-class winemakers, which in Colorado at the time people weren't doing. So I brought in Ben Parsons, who ended up doing Infinite Monkey, and I brought in Joe Buck after Ben went on his own. Joe Buckle joined me, and he'd worked at Flowers and Cohen Brothers. He was the real thing, real McCoy. He was here for 10 years. He's now on his own too, so I'm hoping I was a bit of a platform. And we then began to produce wines that reflected those two fellows' absolute commitment to quality. And I was dragged into it. I was dragged along by them.
What is your favorite wine out right now? It's a big.
Do you know there's some
choice.
Big wines that are really good? Like we did the Katrin and Christoph, which I made. Katrin and Christoph Henkel own Dunton, and I've had an almost umbilical relationship with Dunton, and very close still. And we call it our sister resort. And I made a wine for them because they're obsessed by quality and style and taste, and they're generous people. And I wanted to make a wine that somehow encapsulated that, distilled that, although not a distilling. And so I made this thing called Katrin and Christoph Reserve. So I'm deeply proud of that, and it's a big wine. And we just did a little video on it.
It's one of my favorites.
Yes, it's lovely. Now that's a bit more costly, but I think we also make some remarkable wines that are a little more reachable. The Merlot we make here is legendary. It's all done on Jesus Castillo's, in front of Jesus Castillo's house. He's been with me 25 years. Or I've been with him 25 years. I can't remember what he thinks. And then we make some lovely whites. We made a Viognier. We have a neighbor here who grew these beautiful grapes. And we made this Viognier, which was very interesting, little sort of hint of sweetness to it, which we tend not to do in wines. But this one, we couldn't avoid it. There was a lovely fruitiness to it.
Yeah. So we've managed to get a bit of the technical stuff out of the way about what you've done. And the reason why I've decided to have John on here today is because of his eccentric personality. And
you've got to stop saying that about me.
You don't like the word eccentric?
I think it's inaccurate. Do you think it's accurate?
I think it's very accurate. I think.
Could we ask Chloe?
There is no lukewarmness when it comes to how you feel about John.
Okay.
You either love him,
or you don't.
I do, or you don't.
I know.
And
can I tell you a quick story?
This is what I'm hoping for.
When I was selling a restaurant, the fellow was buying the restaurant, and at the time, lots of people would come and see me in Charleston. And the assumption was that they did like me, those people.
Yeah.
And so I told this fellow, I said, you're taking on a bit of a task here because a lot of people come here specifically to see me. Mm-hmm. He said, yes. He said, quite a number. He said, exactly balanced by the people who were very so glad never to see you again.
There we go.
Confirming your theory.
Yes.
Right, okay.
Yes.
Right.
And so this morning when I showed up, you, for the first time ever, I've seen you with a really nice full beard. What's made you, from what you've experienced in this recent turn of events want to change a little bit about what you do and how you do it?
It's just been very taxing.
Yeah.
It's been very taxing. And it's always like everything. It always comes to rest on the poorest people in your community. So, when somebody tells me that to stay at home, my good friends in Telluride, they can.
Yeah.
But how much more taxing if you live paycheck to paycheck. And so, like always, everything is visited on the least fortunate.
Yeah.
And then compounded by a state in... I've been in America now for 50 years, and I never remember anything quite so divisive. And pulling together is probably what we need.
Yeah.
And so I grew my beard as a sort of... I used to grow a beard, grow stubble is what would do, prior to opening a restaurant, so that I'd look at myself and it'd be so awful in the morning that it would remind me, and I keep hammering.
Mm-hmm.
And I did this for somewhat similar reasons. I thought, until we get back in the saddle, until we begin to act decently towards each other and resolve some of the most beastly social problems that are besetting us, and until we address them rather than bullying. There's an old saying in England, bullies are cowards and cowards are bullies. And I'm not saying I'm applying that to anybody, but I leave that open to you.
And what are you doing here at the Vineyard to cope with and maybe change the ways that you were doing things, or are you just keeping going with because you had?
No, we've changed. No, we've had to. Mm-hmm. This would be a perfect time to bring Chloe in. Is there any chance we could do that?
I would love to bring Chloe in.
And so a bit of background. Chloe and I've been friends for a very, very long time, but we worked together a little bit at Dunton.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, we would laugh and tease about it. When are you going to come to work for me? Yeah. And it seemed to slip away from us a few times. And then eventually we seemed to be able to pin it down. And so what she's brought is a really very fresh approach to everything. So repeating the same things is... She's actually coined a new word that we didn't have before. It's NO. And so when I say the things that I always want to do the way I've always done them.
No. No. And you can tell, just by walking in here, as we mentioned earlier, it's always been wonderful here. And now it's more wonderful than it really has ever been. And I mean that. And I think that John is very lucky to have you here. And
thank you. That's really kind.
No question.
Yeah, no question.
No
it's
question.
Just the truth. And so I'm excited to see all the ways that you grow this place and you bring something that is needed to the world in general. So I mean that. Yeah.
And there's one other thing to think about is that there's been a sort of unity. When it was very tense, we had our ups and downs, and so it was very tense. So what tends to... that lovely harmony that works for everything, as we well know in the national situation where there is no harmony. And there isn't harmony in lots of places, not only America. But harmony means that suddenly Jesus and I, and the other people that Chloe has brought in, it's just easier.
Yeah.
And that's been a huge change.
Yeah. So Chloe, tell me a little bit about what you do here and why you do it.
Yeah. So I've been here almost a year. I came on board last August, and just kind of figured out what the role would be as it moved forward, I think. And I've been the general manager since January, and it's been a roller coaster, and it's been wonderful, and it's been the most fun I've ever had. And I think I just feel very lucky that there's already such a brilliant foundation here, and incredible people like John and Jesus who have, poured a lot of years and time and energy into this, and to be able to contribute my ideas and have that freedom and of expression, I think as it's made it so cool and adaptable and be able to grow and change.
And talk about the things like the social media stuff that you...
Yeah, well, being a millennial has been an advantage. Just my familiarity with
Could I just
things.
point out that I'm not a millennial?
No.
So just having familiarity with that and seeing how other businesses that I like utilize those platforms, and trying to kind of bridge that with the vineyard, because so many people are on Instagram and Facebook, and it's such an easy and approachable way to reach out to people, and trying to make it a little more fun too and interactive.
And you've
so
done
we've
that.
done those videos with John that are
those are the best.
Just, I mean, he's my one take wonder. It's because I don't have editing skills really.
So we're doing it now.
Yeah,
this has got to be good.
Yeah. So we just kind of sit down and talk about, what wine do you want to talk about, and what's interesting today? What have you read or seen or spoken to that's kind of like on your mind at the moment? And that's been just really where we started. And it's been fun too, because we've tried to approach it as not, wine tastings can only be so exciting for people. So how can you weave wine into how it is in the world? It's part of just life and what else is going on, and the people you're with, and the movies you're seeing, and music you're listening to. So that's been really fun. That's
Great.
been,
yeah. So what's if you were to pick one story about working down at the vineyard, do you have one that you could share?
I don't know. Gosh. I don't know. That's hard. There's so many. I mean, every day is
it's something new.
Full, honestly.
You guys go down to Flagstaff fairly often,
which is always a lot of fun.
Yes.
And there's one thing that's so fun about being here and spending time with John is just the interest that he takes in things, and so it's never a dull moment, and I like to live that way as well. So, and I think too, getting to know Jesus better has been pretty amazing, and I'm just so impressed by him as a person and what he does in his trade. And when this all hit, and we had to really sit down and think about how we were going to handle COVID and staffing and all that, we had to, everyone's back on now, but for a little bit we had to really kind of tighten our belts. And I got to spend some time in the wine house with Jesus as his kind of like guinea pig and just fixer upper doing things, and got to see how he works, and the attention to detail and the care that he puts into making wine is amazing. It makes sense why it's so loved and why it's so good.
One thing I was thinking about is, and we should have thought about one bizarre moment that you had to suffer in this place, or the innumerable bizarre
Which one?
Yeah, I know which one. Some time ago, a very great friend of mine, who I heard from this morning, actually, David McMillan, his son Finn McMillan, who is now trying to find work as an actor in London, went through acting school, worked here every summer for me. He's an adorable boy, and I've loved him forever. And he went home once, having worked here through the summer, and he was describing to his father, Jesus and Antonio, two fellows who worked for me very hard. And he said, it was the most brilliant thing to see people's attention to detail in things that you might think to be almost insignificant. So nothing was looked over. So if in fact you're planting, and it said 1/4 inch seed, you put them in a 1/4 inch seed. And if it said thin them after 10 days, you goddamn thinned them after 10 days. And nothing was slack. And for them, coming from a prosperous family in England, to see that level of devotion at what can seem at almost a sort of menial level, which it is not. I can remember his father being delighted by the boy's recognition of that. And it's those sort of things that make my life precious.
It's the alchemy that's really involved in winemaking in general, which is turning...
Or farming.
In farming.
Yeah. And it's the sort of details, when people complain about the amount of money, how cheap it is to have grazing on public lands and things. And they talk about money like somebody's making money. And a cowboy will ride for 5-6 days to find a calf that's been delivered somewhere that at the most could be worth $40. So it's not about money, it's about your heart.
Well, you're going to have a lot of that here.
Yeah.
And we're going to check the time. Oh, we still got a little bit of time. That's
okay,
exciting.
great.
Yeah, so about 10 more minutes.
Yep.
And again, we're here with John Sutcliffe, the owner of Sutcliffe Vineyards in McElmo Canyon, which is, it's like a portal. You drive from Cortez through the canyon and you're shot out in a whole different world.
Yes. and Chloe Kissner.
Yep, and Chloe Kissner,
who is now general manager. And at first, I gave her some other title. I was certainly nervous about buttering her bread too thick.
Yeah.
What did I call you at first?
Project and operations.
Yeah, which is
I know
which was fitting at the time. It's true.
Yeah,
lots of,
and then
know,
with
with
some deep resentment, I was forced to commit myself to general managing. So I've done it. I've done it. Okay. All right, and it's going well. It's going really well.
It is. You can feel it and see it, and so you have the orchard here. When's the first thing going to be?
Well, we got slaughtered in the orchard in the spring. It was jolly cold, and so we lost peaches, nectarines, and even cherries, which we don't know, and plums. We never lose plums.
I was expecting to see some things on the trees
well,
when I got here today.
I think they're still green gauge, though.
Yeah, there's something green. There's one tree that has something on
like
over there.
Really
there's like one green gauge,
which I'm going to protect with.
Right, but the other last year, justice is rendered in very strange ways, and so. One of the ways justice was rendered last year was we had so many fruit on the trees that I called it an invasion. And I would say that I'd wake up in the morning terrified of how many cherries there were on the trees. And then I'd bring a crew in that would work non-stop for hours and hours picking cherries and make no appreciable difference to the number of cherries. And so we said there were successive waves of so the first invasion was apricots, which was over the top, and it was like pissed off apricots everywhere. And then we're followed by cherries, and then the peaches. They were lying on the ground. We couldn't even pick them in time. And our frailty, our inability to do that, was illustrated in the good Lord taking everything away.
That's exactly right.
There always is some implicit justice out there.
But the vines are doing well.
No. They're doing well in that they're coming back, but again, the frost got everything. So we've got quite a lot. We'll probably pull out 4 or 5 tons of Chardonnay, which is vital to us because our Chardonnay is so celebrated. And we'll get a bit off other things, but not really. The timing of it was just so terrible, and it was 14 or 15 degrees. So if it'd been 3 or 4 degrees under freezing, then you have a bit of a shot at it in a few hours. But at 14 or 15 degrees, it's categorical.
And what was the first wine you ever made? Was it from these vines here planted?
It was so awful.
It was
so awful. I made this Merlot, and I was incredibly proud of it. I was sitting on the floor with my then wife. Only had one. Anyway, I was sitting on the floor with my then wife, and we tasted it, and I said, it's actually wine. And she looked at me and said, yeah, it is. It's wine. And I said, no, but there was no guarantee, but this is actually wine. Yeah. So there was a lot of self-congratulation until the sort of quality bit percolated through.
Till you had other people try it. I was listening to a Dan O'Reilly, I think I pronounced his name wrong, who's a psychologist, was talking about how people relate to the things that they do. And a person they did these studies where these people did origami, right? And so they had a sheet that told them the steps that they could make the origami. And the value that they put on their origami when it was done was amazing. And then they gave it to a crowd who rated the value of the origami that they had done. And these are no origami professionals by any means. And the crowd they had no relation to it, and so they valued it extremely low. and this is what happens with the things that we love, is initially, because we invest our time and our heart into them, this is why people love their children more than other people love other people's children, because you put your time and your heart into it. And so there's always that thing that when you first do something or make something, which I'm going through right now, is you love it and you know what it can be, and you know that it's starting somewhere, but it's a little nerve-wracking.
And truthfully, it was sort of palatable. I mean, you could drink it. It was. I can remember that I've got a photograph of my mother and father here. My father, would buy Bulgarian wines and
Yeah.
things, like $1.50, So he was not the best judge, even though he liked wines.
Yeah.
He loved to drink them. He didn't mind talking about them at times.
Yeah.
But he was, he wasn't the pundit.
Yeah.
And my mother was much more direct, and she said, yes, it's not that pleasant, I think was her comment. I'm always teased about, apparently I do this, which there's a bit of breakfast on my trousers at the moment, which I'm picking on. Looks like porridge, but it could be a biscuit. And I'm always told that I walk up to someone and say, hello, I'm John Sutcliffe. And she found it utterly hilarious.
I do. I like it though.
Yeah. I think people forget. I forget to people will introduce themselves to me and then they'll look at me.
Like, okay, your turn.
Yeah, and I have very little relation to who I am. I care more about you. That's just the way I've always been. And I have
it's just as in England,
that.
that we do that,
Yeah.
I think we do. I can't remember.
When was the last time you were in England?
Not too long ago, just before the coronavirus closed down. I went over for a bit of a holiday in Wales, walked along the coastline, which was pretty amazing. Sort of 60-mile-an-hour winds, sleeting rain, horizontal to the ground, 500-foot cliffs, but somehow the perfect circumstance.
Yeah.
It was like being in a Charlotte Bronte
and
play.
You took Nor there. I saw
Nor was there.
Yep.
We both went, and she wanted to do that. I wanted to go somewhere. I actually was thinking of going somewhere in Africa. I was actually talking about going to Ethiopia. I was at school with Haile Selassie's son, Mengistu, at Sandhurst, and I'd always kept a bit of a relationship, and I knew some people. So I didn't know them at Sandhurst, but I knew of them, and so I'd sort of entertained the idea of going. Ethiopia's doing some fairly impressive things in Africa, so that was my plan. Yeah. Well, that changed to Wales. That's a very different sort of set of circumstances. So we walked, and then I came home, and a very good friend was killed in an accident in a village, and so I went home for the memorial bonfire. They had a bonfire and a little fundraiser. He's planted millions of trees. So I went back for that and just got out. And I went for one night, stayed at the Henkel's house in London, and then the next day their driver took me to the party, which was hours away. And then I drove back that night and then flew home. Yeah, so it was very sad to lose him. He was an older man, older than me, if that's physically possible. And but he was a great character. And his life was, we all celebrated his going. So got back. So that's, what was that, March or something?
Yeah.
It's February or March. So not very long.
No.
Add something from
so,
earlier?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
This shit is held in there.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, no, because I heard you asking John about how things have kind of changed or stayed the same throughout just the past couple months and the chaos that has ensued. In addition to just kind of the more creativity piece, one thing that we've talked a lot about that I think is a value and kind of in accord with what you're doing as well is really focusing on what relationships you want to have and what businesses and people that we really value working with and share values with, and how we can kind of nurture those relationships more. And I think it's so easy just in life and also in business. You feel like you're constantly under pressure. You have to go. It's just easy to get very caught up in the day-to-day of going and having this forced pause to kind of reflect on what and why you want to do and be, I think has been one of the best silver linings of everything.
And I've had thinking people say that. Yeah. I've had thinking people say, actually, and you should look for a silver lining, for God's sake. By the same token, it's not always there. And so when you're looking for this silver lining, the one thing it has caused, for some people, it's caused the most awful self-reflection. Yeah. And anger has sort of risen up, and they're cross about everything. Or you can look at and you can examine exactly where you are, exactly what Chloe's just said, and that, are we spinning our wheels? Should we be doing this? Yeah. And I think implicit in what she said is also our development, of our wine club and wine society, where we have people deeply committed to the vineyard. And now I think we look after them in a much more sanguine way, in a very nice way.
Yeah.
And
Shows commitment.
Yeah, I mean, you can speak to the experience people have when they come here. It's such a magical place. I mean, people, it resonates with people, and it's a memory, and it's so wanting to share that right now, especially to have a sweet place in the world to go and enjoy is a really nice thing to be able to offer.
Yeah, and I think that's why I'm doing what I'm doing right now, is because you have to decide, are you gonna just keep doing the same things that I don't think there's a choice. You're not gonna be able to do the things that you once were able to do, so you can either shift and make the most out of it and cultivate those relationships that mean the most to you and put yourself into the place where you want to see things go, or I think that's where people will fail in all of this, and it'll just lead to them having to decide how to move forward. And anybody that's able to recognize that is, I think, going to be able to move through this in a bigger way than what we've all been doing. So
yeah, it is, and we know it's sort of captivating to do new things always, and if those new things work fairly well, you get preoccupied with them. And then there is the core of some of the stuff we do, that today we're going to talk about some of the core of it. So you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, although that has always struck me as a perfectly sound idea.
John,
don't mean it.
Yeah, I mean, I love restarting. I think there's
restarting feels good. What you want to do is, if you've built any sort of platform, which we have, and you look at the place and people's commitment to the place. So that's always a sort of thing to think about. And I think one thing you have to think about is there are people who are committed to this place and perhaps retain a perception of it that we're in the process of changing. And so you have to be a little bit conscious of that, but to be slightly aware that this is how they see us.
Yeah. So I don't think we're really reinventing the wheel, just really focusing on what at the core, what is it, and what do we want to keep and what do we want to nurture.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to see that happen. I think that we're coming up on our time here.
Good.
So I want to thank you. I really do want to thank both of you for letting me be here today.
You're part of us. You've always been part of us.
I know it's one of my favorite places in the world, and I truly mean that. So I'm excited to be here for the harvest dinner. I will be here in whatever capacity you would like me to be here in. And
well, you define your own capacity.
I know I do.
Just so you know. So we don't expect you to be picking up dirty plates.
Yeah.
You define your own capacity. You live your life defining your own capacity.
Yes, I do.
Yeah. But she'll certainly be here.
But I will be a helping hand in whatever way I can be, because this would be my 5th year, which is exciting. So
perfect. And we so hope that happens. And that's actually one of our things for today.
Big one on the list. Yeah.
Hey, you can see there's enough room. You can seat parties.
You can, but
you can adapt.
You can adapt.
You've got to adapt, but by the same token, sort of there's an exuberance and a joyfulness that I don't want to be policed out of the place.
Yeah. And I think that's happening. I went into Steamworks last night, and they're going to be doing wonderful things, but there's that friction.
How did you get it? Can you sit down in Steamworks?
You can sit down in Steamworks, and so it's.
What did they do? Are you just in the benches, or what?
No, so they did the dining room. They did the back dining room area.
What do you mean, the garden and stuff?
Yep. So all of the patio, because you can seat more people outside. They can only let 50 people in to the inside, which is really difficult because the capacity inside is huge.
Yeah,
it's a quarter of that, right? 50 people. So they're just trying to navigate and I think pull through. So they've been able to focus on outdoors. I heard they're going to be opening up Main Street for closing. They might be closing off Main Street for the businesses in downtown Durango.
I heard that
too, so that they can seat people out in the streets. Yep. But obviously Steamworks doesn't have that option. So last night was the first night. I imagine that it's going to be worlds different in a week from now. They're going to be able to hone in on and change a few things that make the flow a little bit better. But it was nice. It was really nice to go be there and be
we
around
would have
people.
gone. We would have gone last night. We went to New Mexico.
Yeah.
Because I'm fond of him and everything.
Well,
else.
I could have invited you next time.
Yes,
Yes. Next time.
Yeah.
And so that's where I'm at. Thank
Good.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
Ben.
This was Tiffany Jocko here with Chloe Kissner and John Sutcliffe talking about Sutcliffe Vineyards in McElmo Canyon, just south of Cortez, Colorado, and it's
actually south and west.
Southwest. And just one of the best places in the world. And this podcast is a part of Food Robbers, and Food Robbers is growing the local food and beverage community. And we're excited to see where that goes for all of the people who are involved and I am in the industry as a whole. You can find me on Instagram at Food Robbers, as well as Facebook at Food Robbers. My email currently is foodrobbers@gmail.com. Did you get that? It's Food Robbers. If you want to email me personally, it's Tiffany Jocko, TiffanyJacot@gmail.com. There's a good chance you forgot how to spell any of that, so I'm going to put it in the description box below. If you are looking for more information about Sutcliffe Vineyards, where they are located, and where you can purchase their wine, which you can do online, you can visit their website at sutcliffewines.com. So that's SutcliffeWines.com. You can also visit their Instagram at sutcliffevineyards.com. Not .com, just at Sutcliffe Vineyards. Instagram won't let you use .com at the end of your Instagram name, if anybody hasn't noticed that before. And again, I'll put all of the information down below so that it's much easier to access. Anywho, anyhow, what, anyway, I hope you all have the very best day and to see you around soon. And thank you again to John and Chloe for having me here today. Any last
No, we
send-offs?
love having you here.
Yeah,
okay.
Great that you're here.
Okay, thank you so very much. Okay,
good.